You've seen it 100 times. Two men face each other in the street. The sun beats down. Hands hover over pistols. Someone draws. A shot cracks through the air. One man falls. The other walks away. Roll credits. That's where Hollywood stops the story. Right there. Right when the real story begins. Because what happened in the next 10 minutes, the next hour, the next 10 years, that's what they never told you. And it wasn't heroic. It wasn't clean. And it sure as hell wasn't over. I'm about to show you what the history books left out. What your grandfather's generation never learned in school. What John Wayne never showed you on that silver screen. The man left standing? He wasn't a hero. He was a marked man. And the town watching him? They weren't grateful. They were calculating. This is the part nobody talks about. The part that separated the men who survived from the men who just lived long enough to regret pulling that trigger. Let's start with something they don't teach you. The law didn't care who drew first. Here's the first thing you need to understand. By the time most famous gunfights happened, the Old West wasn't wild anymore. It was 1881, 1882, 1885. Territorial governors were under pressure from Washington. Eastern newspapers were calling the West a lawless embarrassment. Businessmen wanted railroads, banks, and respectability. That meant law, real law. Towns like Tombstone, Dodge City, and El Paso had city ordinances against carrying firearms within city limits. Wearing a gun on Main Street could get you fined. Pulling one could get you arrested. Killing a man? That was murder. Period. It didn't matter if he drew first. It didn't matter if the whole town saw it. The law said, if you killed a man, you stood trial. Let me give you an example. Wild Bill Hickok, July 21st, 1865, Springfield, Missouri. He faced Davis Tutt in the town square. Witnesses said it was fair. Tutt drew. Hickok fired. Tutt died. Hickok was arrested within the hour. He stood. Trial for murder. Murder, not manslaughter, not self-defense, murder. He only walked free because the jury liked him better than they liked Tutt, who was an outsider. The judge told them straight, if you believe Hickok could have walked away, then this is murder. Hickok got lucky. Most men didn't. And here's what Hollywood never showed you. Hickok spent the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. Tutt had family. They didn't forget. 11 years later, in Deadwood, Jack McCall walked up behind Hickok and shot him in the back of the head while he played poker. No duel, no warning, just dead. That's the real West. You survived the duel. Revenge came later. Now let me tell you about the men who didn't get lucky. Most men who survived gunfights made the same fatal mistake. They thought their reputation would protect them. It never did. Dallas Stoudenmire. You probably never heard of him, but in 1881 he was one of the most respected lawmen in Texas, town marshal of El Paso. 6 feet tall, stone cold. He'd killed 3 men in a single shootout his first week on the job, and the town loved him for it. April 14th, 1881. A man named Johnson pulled a gun on him outside a saloon. Stoudenmire drew faster. Johnson died in the street. Witnesses said it was clean, justified, self-defense. Stoudenmire walked free. But here's what happened next. Johnson had brothers. They had friends. And those friends had lawyers. Within 2 months, Stoudenmire was being questioned. Not arrested, questioned. The city council wanted reports, depositions, written testimony. They wanted him to prove he'd had no choice. He did. He kept his badge. But something changed. He started drinking. Started seeing threats where there weren't any. On September 18th, 1882, he walked into a saloon and shot 2 men he claimed were reaching for weapons. This time, the witnesses disagreed. Some said self-defense. Others said murder. The city council didn't care about the truth anymore. They cared about the newspapers. They cared about Eastern investors who wanted a civilized town. Stoudenmire was forced to resign. 3 months later, he was ambushed outside a barber shop, shot 4 times by the brothers of one of the men he'd killed. He died in the street alone, stripped of his badge and his reputation. That's the mistake. He thought his reputation would save him. It made him a target. And it wasn't just him. John Selman, Ben Thompson, Clay Allison, all of them made the same error. They believed that being right mattered. It didn't. What mattered was witnesses, politics, who had money, who had connections. And if you didn't have those things, you were alone. That's the West they don't show you. The one where survival wasn't about being fast. It was about being smart. And most men weren't smart enough. Now let me tell you the part that's been buried in courthouse archives and personal letters for over a century. Most men who killed in gunfights, even justified ones, spent the rest of their lives haunted by what they'd done. I'm not talking about guilt in the Hollywood sense. I'm talking about real psychological damage, paranoia, rage, insomnia, alcoholism. There are records, court testimonies, diaries. John Wesley Hardin killed his first man at 15. By the time he was arrested in 1877, he'd killed more than 20 men. He claimed everyone was justified. Self-defense, fair fights. Maybe some were. But here's what happened after. He spent 15 years in a Texas prison, and during that time he wrote an autobiography, 600 pages, trying to convince the world and himself that he wasn't a monster. He failed. When he was released in 1894, no town wanted him. No job would hire him. His wife had left him. His children wouldn't speak to him. He drifted from saloon to saloon, drunk, broke, paranoid that someone would recognize him. On August 19, 1895, an off-duty constable named John Selman walked into the Acme Saloon in El Paso and shot Hardin in the back of the head. Selman didn't even know who he was. He just didn't like the way Hardin looked at him. That's what Hollywood won't show you. The isolation, the guilt, the fact that even if you walked away legally free, you were never really free. And then there's the families. Every man you killed had brothers, sons, fathers, friends. In the Old West, law enforcement was thin, corrupt, underpaid. A sheriff couldn't protect you. Hell, half the time he didn't want to. So the dead man's family waited. They waited months, years, a decade. And then, when you finally stopped looking over your shoulder, when you finally thought it was over, that's when they came. Tom McClory was killed at the OK Corral in 1881. His brother Frank died with him. Their friends didn't forget. 2 months later, Virgil Earp was ambushed and crippled. 3 months after that, Morgan Earp was shot through a window while playing billiards. Killed instantly. Wyatt Earp, the hero of the story, fled Arizona and never returned. He spent the rest of his life moving from town to town, using fake names, looking over his shoulder. He died in Los Angeles in 1929, 48 years after the gunfight. Still running. That's the truth they hid from you. Let me show you exactly what happened to the men who thought they'd won. Clay Allison, September 1870, Canadian River, New Mexico. He killed a man named Chunk Colbert in what witnesses called a fair fight. Colbert drew first. Allison shot faster. No charges. He walked free. But 5 years later, Allison was dragged into court over another killing. This time, it stuck. Witnesses changed their stories. A judge signed a warrant. Allison fled New Mexico and never returned. He drifted through Kansas, Texas, Colorado. No town wanted him for long. On July 3, 1887, he fell off a freight wagon, drunk, and the wheel crushed his skull. He was 47 years old. That's how it ended for most of them. Not in a blaze of glory, in the dirt, alone, forgotten. Luke Short, another famous name, gambler, gunfighter, friend of Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp. He survived multiple gunfights, always justified, always clean. But by 1893, he was broke. His health was failing. His reputation meant nothing. He died of dropsy in a boarding house in Gouda Springs, Kansas. No friends, no family. The newspapers barely mentioned it. Even Wyatt Earp, the one-man Hollywood turned into a legend, spent decades fighting off murder charges, lawsuits, and accusers. After the OK Corral, he was charged with murder. The charges were dropped, but the damage was done. His brother Morgan was murdered. His brother Virgil was maimed. His reputation was destroyed in Arizona. He fled to Colorado, then to Alaska, then to California. He worked as a bouncer, a card dealer, a mining consultant. He died in 1929 in a small rental house in Los Angeles. He was 80 years old, broke, bitter, and still being accused in newspapers of being a killer. That's the pattern. You survived the duel. You spent the rest of your life paying for it. And most men, They didn't last long enough to grow old. So here's the truth your teachers never told you. The truth Hollywood will never show you. In the real Old West, winning a gunfight didn't make you a hero. It made you a problem. A legal problem. A political problem. A target for revenge. The man left standing wasn't free. He was a defendant, a suspect, and a marked man. And in a land where law was fragile and revenge was patient, that target never went away. Some men lived for years, some for decades, but they all lived looking over their shoulders, knowing that somewhere, someone remembered, someone waited. The duel ended in seconds. The consequences lasted a lifetime, and in the end, almost none of them died in a fair fight. They died in ambushes, in back alleys, shot from behind, alone. That's the part no one told you, until now.